kids have probably been walking home from school when they were 10. I know for a fact people in my neighborhood were walking home from school when they were 10. I mean, this is just nuts. So here's a brief update on the situation, clip 9.
It is normal for kids to be walking around Mineral Bluff. It's a four-way stop, very low traffic. Go to the Dollar General today, and it's, you know, not uncommon for kids to do. So I was shocked. I was angry, frustrated, probably all those things at once, but mostly I was just trying to be
Morning, Joko.
because I didn't want them to worry.
David, we reached out to that sheriff's department last night. They sent us this video, but they said they're not going to comment on this case right now. What has Brittany been charged with, and are you now suing the authorities that are involved here?
Well, we're not suing them yet. She has formally been charged with reckless conduct. What's interesting is when the deputy arrested her, as the body cam shows, Brittany asks, "What am I being arrested for?" And the deputy says, "Reckless endangerment." Well, there is no such law in Georgia. Secondly, in 1997, the Georgia Supreme Court held that statute unconstitutional when applied to parents because it doesn't tell them what is and isn't permissible and constitutes reckless conduct. So it's really problematic for those two reasons. I found it very interesting, and your viewers should. The deputy really asked, well, he's 10, can he walk into town? And that's not illegal. And the deputy responds, and the audio here would say, yes, it's illegal for a 10-year-old to walk into town. And it clearly is not. So it's that kind of authoritarian, my judgment rules your judgment as a parent, and the notion that it's not safe. I've said before, if you don't think it's safe for people to walk on the shoulder of the road, and by the way, much of the road there is a sidewalk, well, put up a sign that says no pedestrians allowed. That's pretty easy.
Yeah, when I first heard this story, I grew up in Ada, Oklahoma, and I mean, we walked all over, all the time. So this has caught the attention of a lot of people across the country. Brittany, I understand.
Yeah, we want to live in America.
Charges.
We're free to move.
That outlines a safety plan.
And it's safe for children to walk their neighborhoods.
Your kids at all times when you're not present. And you say no to that. Why?
Well, first of all, because there's been no guarantee that they will actually drop the charges.
Now pause it right there. This is so interesting. She's got a good lawyer. But yeah, you know, I learned the hard way. When you're dealing with government attorneys and they basically offer you a deal for cooperation, get it in writing, because their words mean nothing. Get that signed. Get that in writing, because if it's not, then they don't hold themselves to their word. They don't have to. So that's a very important thing too. All right, we'll end it there as we're about to call it a day here. But
I drove by where that fire was last night, and I can't even see where it was.
Bad parenting, if you'd like. But imagine just how
I think the trees are too thick on the house that was burning.
I grew up in a neighborhood in a country where kids walked around the neighborhood. They walked home from school. It wasn't considered a crime or even bad parenting. But imagine this juxtaposed with the story that we had in the second hour today, where a parent loses custody because he doesn't want his son to be chemically castrated and transed before he's even a teenager, and that's considered bad parenting, and that will lose you custody. This woman's son walks to the local general store, and now she's facing criminal charges. So a mother that will chemically castrate her son, that's considered normal, you get full custody. A mother that has a kid that walks down the street to a general store, it's considered reckless endangerment, and she faces criminal charges. This is clown world stuff, man. This is not the America I want to live in. It's not the America I grew up in. It's likely not the America that most of this audience grew up in. And so there is a huge human interest in this story, and probably so much public pressure now. in this small Georgia county that they're going to have to drop these charges, is my guess, because this is just completely insane. So what, a parent gets criminally charged when a kid walks down the street, walks home from school, walks to the general store to get a bag of candy? I mean, give me a break. We'll take a 21-hour break and do it all again tomorrow.
With all of the highest quality electrolytes and vitamins and minerals that will keep your big fat juicy and clean. And a lot of those
women, heated docs. Nice.
She's talking about need Hydroforce because it's a really good quality, but everybody else needs it as well. So you can go to thealexjonesstore.com and get your Hydroforce, get your ultimate sea moss. It's got highest quality organic iodine, all those other trace vitamins, minerals. It's the superfood, super hot thing. We private label it, one of the top companies in the nation. So when you get Ultimate Sea Moss, it's an amazing superfood, and it's good for all of your glands and all of your body, and your immune system, and everything. Your brain cells, your eyes, your intestines, your skin, and other parts. So that's my message to Cardi B. Cardi B, you need Ultimate Sea Moss, and you need Hydroforce, and you need gut cleanse, and you need probiotics while you're eating all that stuff you were talking about. The ribs and the macaroni and everything else. I hear I'm getting hungry. Well, that's what you got your probiotic for, to help make sure little good bacteria help process. You're like, bacteria in my gut. You're pretty smart. I don't know about that. You're telling people really gross stuff. So it's all available. Everything for Cardi B, everything for Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi and Liz Cheney. All you girls that want to be healthy, you don't want to take those COVID shots, you don't want to drink that fluoride, you listen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you want to go to the Alex Jones store. Congressman Massey and many other
I'm sure.
said Biden is greenlighting total war, nuclear war. Stories up on Infowars.com. Representative Thomas Massey says Biden greenlighting striking Russia an unconstitutional act of war and impeachable offense. They're also calling for the 25th Amendment to be invoked. So is General Flynn. And the issue is, obviously, Biden's not in control. Then you've got Kamala Harris.
You too, bud. Have fun.
And then she has a pretext during the escalated war to have Trump assassinated. Look like he's a Russian agent, as they already are. Declare martial law, launch a cyber attack, claim the Russians have done it. Cut off a lot of the power across the country. That's what they've been pre-programming. That's what they've been warning of. They launch a war with Russia, escalate, knock a bunch of power out, blame it on the Russians, use that to turn off the internet. We'll still get government feeds, but the internet kill switch that Obama put in place means you only get government establishment feeds.
Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates and the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee on National Security Threats. Senators kept referring to a recent globalist-backed RAND Corporation report that doubts a U.S. victory in a potential nuclear war with North Korea. The RAND report says U.S. forces today are larger than necessary to fight a single major war, but are failing to keep pace with the modernizing forces of great power adversaries, are poorly postured to meet key challenges in Europe and East Asia.
It was stunning, I think, to many Americans that a report could say we could conceivably, under plausible conditions, lose the next war. What do you say to someone who would make that flat statement?
So I would have to look at the context assessment. Is it one particular war? Is it multiple wars? Is it holding, deterring? I do agree with everything that Director Coates says in terms of closing the gaps and capabilities. Our opponents are going to come at us in a very asymmetric way. The technology gap is closing, and the fact that we have global commitments, it's hard to posture yourself everywhere in the globe. So you're always going to have that time distance where you're going to have to move, or you may be out of position when a conflict starts.
Failing propaganda mouthpiece Newsweek reported state-backed hackers in North Korea are setting their sights on critical infrastructure in the United States with the aim of knocking out power cybersecurity researchers have warned a group of hackers by the name of Covelight is developing malware that could infect power grids, according to research from U.S.-based firm Dragos, triggering electrical outages similar to those that happened in the Ukraine in 2016. While America sleeps, it is under a blitzkrieg-level attack from within, as the CCP and the United Nations work in lockstep under the banner of the New World Order to collapse Western civilization before the citizens of the free world regain power and justice.
The committee has found that the CCP is waging a war without weapons against America, and the Biden-Harris administration has no government-wide strategy to combat CCP warfare. Unlike the first Cold War, the adversary is already within, having entrenched itself within U.S. borders, institutions, businesses, universities, and...
The Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Kathy Hochul was arrested on federal charges for acting as a secret agent of the Chinese government. Last year, several individuals were arrested on charges that they had helped to establish secret police stations. Dr. Thayer, can you elaborate on why the Chinese government would establish a secret police station in New York City?
Their purpose is to intimidate and coerce Chinese Americans, other members of the Chinese diaspora, for example, and why we tolerate such a violation of our sovereignty, I simply don't know.
If you do not control the borders, you are going to destroy our country. So now that they're sending the migrants into New York and stuff like that, so all of my super liberal friends, now they realize what the problem is.
I personally have no confidence that the FBI will rein in its own conduct. It is my opinion that the Bureau used reprisal and fear to control the workforce. I personally believe that there are no current effective checks and balances against them conducting lawless action with any type of correction in a legitimate time frame. I welcome the work of the IG, but I think any type of lawless action, there's no legitimate time frame to rein them back in.
Ladies and gentlemen, InfoWars is back on the air. The judge is having emergency hearings. Looks like their fraudulent sale won't go through. Regardless, I'm suing the daylights out of the Democratic Party and the big national gun control group that's actually behind the onion and is now admitted it in court. So, we also have backup studios, the Alex Jones Network. Whatever they do, we're staying on air to make sure Trump gets into office and to back him and his agenda to stop World War III, secure the borders, and more. But we can't do it without your support. So there are all these new, amazing, incredible designs up on AlexJonesNetwork.com. There's nothing to do with it. Not owned by me, so you can never get them. That's how we stay on the air and we're successful in shutting us down. You go to the AlexJonesNetwork.com and you get supplements, t-shirts, limited editions, limited fundraiser, posters, and more. You will be on the air regardless of the Alex Jones Network. Please go to the site now, thealexjonesnetwork.com. Keep us on air. Amazing products. Thank you so much for taking action. We are the resistance.
It's Thursday, November 21st, in the year of our Lord 2024. And you're listening to the American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith. Watch it live right now at band.video. I think it's time to open this thing. Get everybody else stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, let's do it.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the American Journal. I'm Coach Harrison Smith. Infowars.com, band.video. Support us at thealexjonestore.com. Of course, we have a lot to talk about today. The big news, Russia launching the first intercontinental ballistic missile attack in the history of war. People are calling it a shocking development. Folks, if you're shocked by this, you haven't been watching InfoWars, I guess. We have a lot of international news to get to today, and we'll also be talking about some potential rifts taking place in the Republican Party, some fractures that should be patched up post-haste to get on with the business of rescuing our country. We'll be joined in the 10 o'clock hour by the one and only Greg Reese, and we're going to be talking about, I guess, the rift in the Republican Party, or whether to have hope or not will be the topic of our discussion. We have a lot of videos to get to, so let's just get into it. Here it is, your Daily Dispatch. Here it is, folks, your Daily Dispatch for Thursday, the 21st of November, 2024. Russia launched intercontinental ballistic missile towards Ukraine. Ukraine's Air Force says they were able to destroy 6 of the missiles during the early Thursday attack. Russian troops launched various missiles, reportedly including an intercontinental ballistic missile from the Astrakhan region. An early morning attack on Thursday.
Morning, Oklahoma.
Ukraine's Air Force said on its Telegram account that it destroyed 6 KH-101 cruise missiles using anti-aircraft combat. The Russian attack hit critical infrastructure in the eastern city of Dnipro. According to the Air Force, you're seeing some of the B-roll of that attack. We'll bring you more information on that in just a second, but a very predictable, if not troubling development. Perfectly in line with the desire of powers that be to get into World War III, really solidify their control of the world. Meanwhile, ICC issues arrest warrants for Israel's Netanyahu, Gallant, and Hamas leader. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense chief, as well as a Hamas leader, Ibrahim al-Masri, for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity, the court said on Thursday. In their decision to grant the warrants, the ICC judges says there were reasonable grounds to believe Netanyahu and Gallant were criminally responsible for starvation in Gaza and the persecution of Palestinians. I guess what tipped him off was when Yoav Gallant went on camera and said we were going to deprive them of food to starve them. That might have been a tip-off there. Now, I imagine the ICC is probably as corrupt as any other big globalist supranational organization. So, not to put too much credence on their decision. Just like listen to what the UN says. I'm not sure why the ICC should be an authority, but it is nice to know that there is a official body that agrees with my personal observations. So it's funny, all the people go, yeah, that's what a ridiculous claim, genocide. That's outrageous. They get like really offended they use the word genocide. It's like, well, it's literally been litigated in the highest court in the world, and they came to the conclusion that yes, it was in fact a genocide. So I guess take it up with them. Meanwhile, Biden administration moves to forgive $4.7 billion of loans to Ukraine. The Biden administration has moved to forgive about $4.7 billion in U.S. loans to Ukraine, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said on Wednesday, as outgoing officials seek to do what they can before leaving office to bolster Ukraine in its war against Russia. The funding bill passed by U.S. Congress in April included just over $9.4 billion of forgivable loans for economic and budgetary support for the Ukraine's government, half of which the president could cancel after November 15th. The bill appropriated a total of $61 billion to help Ukraine fight the full-scale invasion Moscow launched in February of 2022. So that loan was never a loan. It was always meant to be a gift, and just tack that on to the paycheck that we're paying so that, Joe Biden's son can make money off selling influence to buy enough Chinese hookers to satisfy him. I think that's why we're in war in Ukraine. I think when we read the history books, it's going to show that the war in Ukraine really got going over the fact that American politicians corrupted degenerate children. Police records reveal new details about sexual assault allegations against Pete Hegseth. Oh, what are the odds? What do you know? A lawyer for Hegseth, President-elect Donald Trump's nominee to be the defense secretary, has said the encounter was consensual. Authorities declined to bring charges in the case. Hegseth later paid the woman an undisclosed sum as part of a non-disclosure agreement. The documents offer the most detailed account yet of the steps police took to investigate Hegseth as part of an incident that's been roiling Trump's team since the former president announced former Fox host was his pick to run the military. The accuser, referred to as Jane Doe, in the 22-page batch of documents released in response to the public records request, met Hegseth at a Republican conference in Monterey, California, where he'd been featured as a speaker. After observing Hegseth behaving inappropriately with women at the upscale event, she said she confronted him. Officers wrote, and the pair argued. Doe called Hegseth, telling her he was a nice guy.
Got a Jaime wants around bad.
Who cares? Who cares, right? Oh, but what if it's real? Oh my gosh, but what if this time it's real? Have you ever heard of a little story called The Boy Who Cried Wolf? Yeah, you do this every time there's somebody that you don't like. You dredge up some sort of obscure, vague, and largely baseless sexual allegation claim from 20 years ago, and it almost always proves to be utterly fallacious. In fact, let me correct myself. It always proves to be utterly fallacious. So if this was real, like maybe you shouldn't have tried this tactic over and over again against Kavanaugh and Gates and Trump and Giuliani and everybody else. So
where are you going, homie?
How about that? We don't care anymore. Maybe it is real. Well, I would give it credence if this had never happened before. If for the first time in 20 years, one of Trump's nominees suddenly had a bad sexual activity crop up in his past. But when it's every single time, and every single time it's Christine Blasey Ford or E. Jean Carroll, like, sorry, if you wanted me to care about this stuff, you shouldn't have abused it. Kind of like if you wanted us to have an asylum system in America, you shouldn't have abused it. If you keep abusing these things, they go away. You need to learn that lesson. And in that note, sorry I said finally, but this is actually the final story here. House Republicans block release of ethics report on Gates. Senators in both parties have demanded to see the committee's investigation report into the sexual misconduct and illicit drug use allegations against Donald Trump's choice for Attorney General. House Republicans voted on Wednesday to block the release of an ethics committee report about sexual misconduct and illicit drug use allegations against former Representative Matt Gates, the Florida Republican who is President-elect Donald J. Trump's choice for Attorney General, setting a possible constitutional clash between the House and the Senate. Again, we covered this ad nauseum yesterday. It's ridiculous. It's literally never happened in history before that you make an accusation, investigate. You understand, the DOJ spent 18 months investigating these claims. 18 months. They came up with nothing. This was Joe Biden's Department of Justice, spent 18 months investigating these claims. The only person that went to jail was the person who made the claims. It was the person who tried to claim that Matt Gates was involved in sex trafficking. He himself was the sex trafficker that was sent to prison. It was all part of an Israeli blackmail plot. We covered that yesterday again, but this is the thing. Just again, it's like, but Donald Trump's appointee had to, he settled a lawsuit 20 years ago against a woman, so he can't be our defense secretary anymore. So many things about this. One, if you actually cared about this, then you shouldn't have used these claims as a weapon over and over, totally diminishing your own credibility and the credibility of any accusers in the future. That's literally the argument we made at the time, telling you what a bad idea it was to flaunt these completely outrageous and ridiculous claims under hashtag believe all women, because you were just absolutely setting up a future where no accusations would be believed. We are now here. Congratulations, you did it, you absolute morons. That's just the first thing. Settlement fund that every member of Congress has access to, and apparently has paid out tens of millions of dollars over the years to settle these unfortunate claims that are made against people of the people that run our country. And again, you cannot accuse somebody of something, have DOJ investigators study their every communication for 18 months, come to the conclusion that they are in fact innocent of the accusations, but then still release the findings. That's ridiculous, and it would open up a gigantic can of worms. So we're telling you again, for the 900th time, the Democrats are doing something ill-advised that will have second-order effects that will be devastating to their own causes, and we're just telling you, you can stop now or you can keep going. It's up to you, but if you keep going, you are only going to destroy in 5, 10 years, maybe next year, any credibility you have to actually express concern about legitimate causes. Because you just keep using these causes illegitimately to progress your immediate political obsession. So you should listen to us. You should just listen to us. I got a lot of videos to go to, and well, I guess we'll get back to all of that, because there's still a lot more to say on all of that topic and everything about just the selection process and appointees. One interesting appointee is the new nominee for Commerce Secretary, Lutnick, because there is a particular role that the Commerce Secretary plays that might have an outsized impact on the future of our country. And that is that the Commerce Secretary conducts the census. So as you may know, when we last did the census, probably it would have been 2020, right? They chose to include illegal aliens, but not designate them illegal aliens. So places with large populations of non-American citizens living there have way more electoral college votes than they should actually have. So if Lutnick gets in, and the Lutnick guy's interesting, he's called Wall Street's most hated investor. Like, everybody in Wall Street hates him. Like, not that everybody hates him for being on Wall Street, not that he's the Wall Street banker that's most hated by everybody. No, he's most hated by Wall Street, which I think is a good thing. He's a bonds trader. He worked himself up from nothing, basically, and his brother and his entire company almost was killed in 9/11. So his company's office was in the Twin Towers, and his brother and his whole family died in that attack, which I think is an interesting character aspect. It probably makes him a lot more interested in what led to that attack and the outcome of it than anybody else who didn't lose family there, on top of the concerns about just, what it did to America and everything else. So he's an interesting character. He's an interesting pick. Yeah, the most hated guy on Wall Street. The unspoken story around Howard Lutnick, Trump's pick for Commerce Secretary. So, yeah, he worked his way up as a high-level bonds trader. So he understands bonds. He understands the market. But importantly, if Trump is able to carry out his deportation program and the census is carried out in an accurate way, not counting illegal aliens, I've heard the calculation that something like 15 electoral votes will move from states like New York and California to states like Texas and Florida, of course following the path of the populations moving out of leftist states and into right-wing ones, which would mean that from now on, Democrats would have to win every swing state to even be competitive with the Electoral College nationally. So again, Commerce Secretaries.
Yeah, I just put in a mobile order for Norman.
They carry out the census, and if we have an accurate census, the electoral map looks a hell of a lot more favorable to Republicans and to red states, as that's where the actual American population is fleeing to, away from the leftist cities that are overrun with millions upon millions of illegal immigrants who at this point are counted and weighted in the distribution of electoral votes. Some of the inter-Republican squabbles going on, Rand Paul coming out against using the military to deport people in America. We'll get back to that. We'll get back. I don't want to start off down that road right now, because obviously the big story today is Russia launching ICBM intercontinental ballistic missiles to attack Ukraine. We've got several videos here. Clip number 16 is the bombs landing in Dnipro.
Morning. No, thank you.
This particular type of missile has multiple independently targeted warheads.
Oh, okay.
Missile that separate in air and then each target a specific.
Thank you. Yeah, you too.
Well, a specific target. We go to clip number 9. This is how the MIRV warhead delivery system works. This is the one that Russia used on Ukraine tonight. Does this have audio, guys? I don't actually know if it does. Okay. Yeah, so it's just the visuals, but you can get the visual there for our television viewers or Bandai video. That the warhead splits into multiple independent missiles, each which have their own targeting functions and targets identified. And they rain down one after another. Now, this is the first time that ICBMs like this have been used in war. And strangely enough, there's still some confusion about this. Looking at Twitter this morning, I mean, there was no uncertainty. It was very much the headline. Russia launched intercontinental ballistic missiles towards Ukraine. But then as you go to places like Google News, you see, well, we think it was, but we're not sure. I think it looks pretty clearly like it is. I mean, that is what we're seeing, and you're seeing the hypersonic speed of this delivery. Next, on that note, I had a video from yesterday. I'll go ahead and drop it in now, guys.
All right, guys.
It shows it's just a
I'll see you when I'm live on desktop. Peace.
An animation of